Hello, and welcome to the Deeply Renegade podcast. My name is Molly, also known as the Deeply Renegade, and I'd like to welcome you guys to episode 353. Today is Saturday, January 23rd, 2021, and I'm glad you could join me today. It is a beautiful sunny day, maybe a little chilly. Hard to tell, I haven't been outside yet. And I think this week's episode is going to be fairly short because I don't know, there isn't a lot going on. It's just a couple a couple of small things. But it was the case where it's like, okay, gather all the things, and it's like, it's not a lot of things, but it shouldn't be too crazy. I have to laugh at myself because what would it be? Next weekend is my sister's baby shower, and it was like, oh, I'll go to the post office on Saturday, no big deal. I went to go look up the one I was planning on visiting today, and it was closes at 3, and I was looking at this information at 2:54. So I guess I'm gonna go to the post office on Monday and mail out my packages. So I have one package all ready to go, which is the baby blanket, the Joris, and 3 baby hats. It's possible that I wasn't done with the baby hats last week, but whatever. I can throw a picture in the episode thread of all 5 of them. I think you've seen most of them. And then my other sister is getting a Joris and 2 baby hats of bigger size than the ones I've sent her in the past. And I think both of those will, or would it be, I included the slightly smaller baby hats with my sister's having hers first, as opposed to my sister that's having her third, because she has a couple of baby hats already. But going closer 12-month size than newborn size, because getting for newborns is challenging. Or it's very sad if you miss and it's too small. So that is the story there. So if there were finished objects in there that I had finished this week, I don't have them. I'm not undoing the tape for you guys. I did have very good intentions though. I did intend to mail them before podcasting, but I guess I'm not mailing them before podcasting. So this is a project that I was talking about in last week's episode that I have already completed. So these are lambing mitts that I knit out of. These are lambing mitts that I knit out of 3 different scraps that I had in my stash. So the brownish colors are a Miss Babs Beachcomber gradient, which is going from a dark brown at the fingers to a much lighter sandy color down, halfway down the elbow. I have some Oakland Wild Sox blue, which is held throughout the whole entire mitt. And then I have a Canon hand-dyed gradient that I used in my Anara wrap. So it starts at a reddish purple, goes to a blurple blue, teal, a green, and then a forest green. So really cute, really fun. The blue helps tie everything together, and I ended up using just the blue and one of the lighter shades for the thumb. I figure it blended in pretty good. I was planning on using the scraps to knit like little multicolored thumbs, but the scraps were too short. Like, you know it's bad when you take your longest one and it can't even knit around, so I'm like, you know what, forget it. So they're not very long thumbs, but these are super warm because the Canon hand dyes is merino cashmere silk. It is super toasty and lovely. And I knit these on US 6 needles, so I used more of a worsted gauge with yarn that's probably closer to like an Aran weight. I assume, or I just assume that fingering head hilt triple is more like Aran. And then you can see like my pinkies are barely even showing through here. But the nice thing about these knits here is that they're actually designed to be like flip down. I'm not sure whether or not my end weaving game is strong enough for this, but you might see a couple of ends in there. But you can flip them down, and then you have your fingers free, but then if your fingers are cold, you can flip them back up again. So the plan is actually to give this to a friend who is knitless. And she is totally a jewel tone gal as well, so I think that she'll really appreciate the colors that I have selected here. Let's see, do I even have... the other thing that I ended up doing differently on this project, we'll see whether or not I've actually closed the tab yet. Oh, I haven't yet. So unfortunately this pattern isn't on Ravelry, it's on the Tolt website, and it is by Veronica Job. So mine are maybe a little bit more solid than what the pattern showed, actually. Mine are not that that's perfect. Oh, that was worse. Alright, the focus wasn't super duper good there. So mine are really sturdy despite the merino cashmere silk in there. The Miss Babs, I believe, was 100% merino, and I can't remember entirely what the blue was. But I used every last bit of the jewel tone gradient. I still have some of my brown gradient left, but now it's just, what would it be, 2 little balls that I've already put away in the stash. And then all of that blue, for which I think I had like a math fail. Because like it said that I only had like 10 grams left, but I definitely had quite a bit more than that. Oh well, I might have miscounted something a different time. But I thought it was, or would it be? But the only thing that I did different on the pattern is I actually, instead of knitting them from the bottom up, because I wanted to use all of the gradient, or as much of the gradient as possible, I ended up doing this from the top down. So when it came time to, or would it be, so I knit until my pinky was covered. So I basically got the distance between where my thumb starts and the pinky. Oh, you can't see. So I made that distance. Then I cast on the number of stitches they told you to hold, and then I just did decreases for the thumb gusset instead of increases. And then once I was done gusseting, I just kept knitting until I ran out of yarn. But I think, or would it be? It'd be the case where I was I was really pleased how that detail ended up coming together. And interestingly, this thumb is just all stockinette, but it seemed like everything turned out to be sturdy and didn't really want to roll. I don't know, could these stand up on their own? Yeah, probably. It was like, can I stand them up on my laptop? Maybe, but I think it'll be fine. So that is my finished object for the week. I really thought that I was going to finish them a lot sooner than I would, but when you're, or would it be? I guess I can just talk about this for a long time, whatever. So there were a couple of things that I did in order to ensure that I could use as much of the yarn as possible. My initial plan was to take all the yarn, weigh it, and split it in half so that I would know exactly how much I had of each one. But what I ended up doing instead, because, I don't know, it was just a little annoying trying to get the split to happen, so I attempted to do one, and then I'm like, okay, whatever, this is not accurate enough for me. So what I decided to do was to knit them two at a time onto circulars. I would not recommend this course of action when you're knitting a project with both ends of cakes with 3 simultaneous cakes. It was a very tangly mess. I took no pictures to document, but it did do what I wanted it to do, which meant that as soon as it was obvious that I couldn't get another round in, I found the halfway point and snipped, so that when it came to the end weaving stage, I could weave in a couple of stitches and then snip off the yarn. So in that regard, it did what I wanted to do. It was just a little fiddly and annoying to do. I definitely prefer 2 circs over magic loop, but it wasn't too crazy. If you hear the banging noise, that is my husband trying to remove a tree stump from our backyard. The hated eucalyptus is whatever, being removed. This is a long slow burn because it only happens on sunny days on the weekends. So while that was annoying, it did end up doing what I wanted it to do. I decided that instead of, and it was the case where I knit until I ran out of yarn, so the yardage on my Miss Babs seemed to be like a little bit more, so as I went on in the project, I was changing that color a little bit less frequently because the yarn amounts were different. The gradient was what I had used on my On the Spice Market shawl. And before I had even started the project, I actually went through and pulled 1 yard lengths from each of the balls so that I could use it for repairs in the future, and just stored them all together, because it's very nice to be able to have that option. I did not save any of the, I didn't end up saving any of the blue yarn, and that is yarn that is in my Find Your Fade too, but oh well, whatever. But yeah, so that was something, or what would it be? It was a little bit annoying to do, but it wasn't the end of the world, and it did allow me to use as much of the yarn as possible. I started with the darker brown stuff because that was stuff where I just had no clue where I was going to use it, like in a scrappy project. It was exactly the yarn I wanted for the project, but that doesn't mean it's a part of like my normal color sense, if that makes any sense. So overall, I was fairly happy with the project. It'll be nice to be able to give that to my friend, and it'll be, I don't know, I might end up doing like one more once over on it, just to make sure that I have all of the little ends properly buried in this, just because there are so many of them in this particular guy. But overall, pretty happy, and whatever, it's not like it's hopelessly whatever, you can create some geometry to make it stand up on its own. See? So that is the story there. I don't know whether or not I feel like doing more scrappy projects. I did go ahead and put away all the scraps for a while. What would it be? It seemed like the right course of action for now. So I still have, or would it be? So we'll go back to works in, or whatever. We'll go back to works in progress now. So this particular work in progress is the Viajante, which is a Martina Bem pattern that I'm knitting out of Omycel lace yarn in the Rittersporn colorway. This is a skein that I picked up at the brick and mortar store in Pfaffenhofen an der Ilm. This is, I'm pretty sure, the last gift knit. Not that I'm never going to do gift knits again, but in terms of my queue of knitting stuff for people that are not me, this is the last one that I've been talking about. So I've been thinking the right course of action is to hurry up and finish it. And I would say the odds are looking pretty good for me. Or would it be? Like, as it stands right now, it's looking very plausible that I'll be able to finish this in about the same time that I did, like, my original one, roughly speaking. It's not like this ends up getting oodles and oodles of love, because it isn't very exciting right now. So, like, last night, the Dear Sweet Lovable one and I ended up watching like a couple of episodes of Umbrella Academy in the dark in bed, and I was sitting with my t-shirt knitting away on this project. So not too crazy. But the main thing here is that while it's in this stage, it's something that I can work on in the dark, during meetings, what would it be, during midnight, all of those things. But once I get to the lace and beads, it will be slightly more complicated, and it will stop being an in the dark project. It is still off of the Yarn Caddy, because since this is now my only project, it is the one that ends up going into a bag when I leave the house. Not that I left the house this week, but I'm assuming that it'll end up staying that way at least for a little while yet. And so I ended up doing the weighing right before the episode, and I recorded that in my Ravelry project page. I figure weekly weigh-ins is a pretty good way to keep track. So I am 64% of the way through the project, which makes me think it's not going to take 10 weeks to finish this, but also, since it is my only project, it will probably get more love, or I will spit a lot. Hard to tell. But I don't know whether or not, or whatever. I'm not sure which way that's going to break, but this is, whatever, like 117 grams of yarn remaining. So, not too crazy there. And let's see here. Yeah, so I ended up knitting, very exciting, stitches falling off the needles. So I ended up knitting 17 rows of this, or 17 rows this week on the project. So not too crazy, but on one hand, like, I'm working on it, It's beautiful colors. Maybe you could even possibly see a little bit of the purple. Maybe not. But yeah, no, it's not very exciting. What is exciting is that it'll be good for it to be done. Anything else I wanted to talk about on this one? Not that I can think of right now. So it's coming along. It's definitely getting pretty big. More impressively big when you hold it this way, because it is sort of coming together on a slant. Yeah, so not too crazy. But it's just the case where in the morning I grab this project out of this room and bring it up to the front of the house where my work computer is. And then when I am done working for the day, I grab the project and I bring it to the back of the house where we are now, and work on it from there. So hopefully not too much longer, but what would it be? I guess I'm just close to 2/3 now. And when I was thinking about it, it was the case where on my original project I ended up starting to put in the lace at the 30% mark. I think I'm going to wait till 25% left to go before I do that. So I think that'll result in a very nice, I think that will result in a very nice amount of meshy beady lace. So not too crazy. I'm hoping to get to spinning this skein back on itself sometime this week, but I just pulled it out because that is one of my intentions. I was debating if I wanted to do it before starting the next ply on my spinning project. Really what I should do is pull out my Swift, wind this into a ball so that I'm ready to go for the plying step. And what that's going to do for me is, this guy is pretty tightly plied, so I feel like it's going to be pretty safe to do a cable on this guy because it is fairly tight, and my main color yarn is a little bit more loosely plied, or it's definitely more loosely plied than this. So that is my thought process right now. Even though I'm probably not starting this project next, I just want everything to be ready for it. So this is coming. We'll see if I get to it this week or not. What I have been spinning are the third set of Rologs and Bats from my Clemis and Clemis samples. So I'm participating in the Completely Twisted and Arbitrary Spin the Bin. And this is my first ounce. So I had an ounce of Rologs that were mixed up BFL all over. And the yarn it ends up creating is very marly and random patches of the lighter BFL and the more brown BFL. So pretty, or would it be? So this will be fun. And then last night I ended up starting to spin, my next set of Rologs. So these are Rologs that are they're white on one end and brown on the other, and mixed in the middle. I think that these are coming from I'm pretty sure that these are coming from the blending board class I ended up taking, and I have a little bit of a Rolag to go. So I think I started with 6, and I have 2.5 left to spin. And so this is resulting in some of that crazy marledy color, but it also has pretty big sections of white and pretty big sections of brown as well. And I'm just doing these, technically speaking, this is my accidental fractal spin. So what has happened is I had my all mixed up ones. I now have my half and half ones, and I'm doing white to white, brown to brown, just so that it results in smoother color transitions. If I did white to brown, there would be a pretty big shift when that point happens, so I would rather have sort of this gradient in and out look. And then the final one that I have is, or the final one that I have is this guy. And so this is a gradient from brown to white. That is Carded Slaver from the Drum Carder. And I would say that this is super duper clever. So what do we, I probably should get a set of dizzes. Because, would it be, that ends up being like a really clever way of doing things on the drum carder. So, would it be? And, yeah, so that is about another ounce there, so I'll have about a 3-ounce skein of this natural colored BFL at the end. And I'm not quite sure what my next bin spin will end up being, but whatever, it shouldn't be too crazy. So that is all of the knitting and spinning content that is within the real world. There's definitely been a lot of thinking and pondering this week about what my next project will be. Though realistically, if I keep working on the Viajante until it is done, it'll be a couple of weeks. So I don't know if, or what it be. So it'd be the case where the question is, do I cast on a sweater so that I can just have it count for the blamed under knit along? And it's quite possible that it would end up being entirely distracting. Or do I wait until I'm properly done and accept the fact that I will not be getting the cal points for that one? Would be, this cal's pretty easy because all you have to do is cast on anyways, so it's not like it's a big deal. But there's also a debate because like, what one would I end up choosing to do? So there are, or would it be the case where I have, in terms of my queue, I have Rolling Rock and Piper and The Weekender and Hinterland, and Swift River, whatever you can end up imagining with skeins of Wool Mice Lace, probably another Hitafude is hiding in there as well, and then, or would it be, I think what's not on there right now is my Rainbow Shimmer, but Pimenton, see what else, oh, Love Note is on there, and then there is some debate about my DK. So I have Madeline Tosh DK, and there are 2 potential sweaters that I was thinking about for it. One of them is called Swan, which means battle swan. And if you've ever met a swan, like, they're always ready for battle. But only 8 people have knit this pattern. It's a Twist Collective pattern, so apparently there was a pretty decent amount of time which it wasn't available. And the other one that I have is Adiri, which is like a lacy sort of cape. Like, they look like cables, but I think it's actually made in lace. So I don't know, like, but I'm definitely feeling, oh, and there's another one that I think involves crayons. But that would be the case where I would reclaim, yarn from a sweater that I'm not wearing, in order to knit that guy. And that is a pattern that will look amazing in the yarn that I have. I have some vintage Neighborhood Fiber Company or what would it be, that Karita ended up dyeing for me in a custom color based on a fractal. Because frankly, the pattern I knitted in just doesn't work for me. So it depends on how badly I want something worsted, because my weekender would be worsted, but that will be in cotton linen. The crayon sweater will actually be in true worsted, and then my DK could be any of 2 things. I think I'm going to, or would it be? It would be the case where if I knit either of those 2 DK patterns, like, I feel like I will be doing my duty in knitting something that isn't like hyper popular and well known. So would it be? It'd be the case where I find both of the patterns to be gorgeous, but who knows? But that's sort of what's swirling in my head right now, is which one of these sweaters am I going to knit, since I'm already ready to go. Like, a decent portion of them I even already own the pattern. So that is the story there. I don't know, I think that I'm leaning more towards cables, so I'll have to do like a quick check of the yarn requirements to make sure that I do have the right amount for that one. That would be super duper gorgeous. So that's which way, I don't know. And I can keep that other sweater in the queue for whenever I get more DK weight yarn, because it's probably gonna happen. I have to work through the ramifications of my buying stash for Dallas with the realities of living in not quite warm San Francisco, or perpetually not quite warm San Francisco. In comparison to places experiencing winter, it's pretty warm, but in comparison to places experiencing like summer or spring, you're seldom going to be hot here. Oh, and then I totally forgot about my Skirm ring. What would it be? One of the women from my spinning group was like, you know that Ellie has her sale, 31% off. It's like, yes, I know. I'm good on skate deer patterns for a while. But thanks for letting me know. I don't think the sale is still on. It was her 31st birthday, so happy birthday, Ellie. So that is the story there. Or all the excitement that is fit to share. We shall see if I compulsively decide to cast on a sweater. But I do believe this ends up kicking off a long period of selfish knitting. Oh, that was the other thing. I ended up pulling out my exploration station to wear whenever I was feeling chilly. And it did end up reminding me that superwash merino singles in blanket form are super delightful, and that maybe I should cast on my Wet the Fade, for which I will probably end up doing some modifications, or I'll probably end up doing some modifications to it, because I think I would want to do way more brioche than is actually in the pattern. As you do. Would it be a different knitting friend from a different knitting group started that pattern, got bored, and just started to do random crap, and I'm perfectly okay with that. So I already have all of the yarn for that one too. So it may be the case where I, coming off an epic project, start new epic projects. Though not like super epic projects, which would be processing a fleece for a sweater. That still may end up, or would it be? I don't want to waste my decisions. I feel like I'm using up all my decisions deciding what it is that I want to cook for lunch and dinner every day. It was definitely the case where I was like sitting down with the Dear Sweet Lovable one. It was like, okay, we know we want this, and because you want this, I also want that. And then being like, I don't know what else to make. Like, I'll replace the things we used up. Whatever, replace the things that we've used up in the last 3 weeks, but it's just big, huge null. So I think we'll be, I'm not sure how long the current amount of, or what would it be? I'll end up going grocery shopping after this. But this particular grocery shop is not going to get me very far into the future, and maybe some of that is just getting takeout ordered in because of like as you do. I think a decent amount of my decisions will actually be what I'm deciding to eat as tacos. So, I don't know, I guess this episode didn't turn out to be too short this week, which is a-okay in my mind. Would it be? You can spend a lot of time speculating about what's going to happen next. Actually, something that ended up being interesting to me was, it wasn't Marcia's last episode, but the one before that, she ended up opening up the discussion about, what would it be, like the thought process behind finishing knits. And I ended up finding her perspective to be very interesting. So, of the people who cast on with Wild Abandon, the question would be, how many of those projects actually make it to the finish line, how many get frogged, and whatever, the whole bit. And I think, at least for me personally, what I find is that because I spend so long thinking about the project, there's a very high chance that it will be done, and it will be done in a fairly timely manner, because I am having all of these swirling distraction thought things, which I occasionally share with you guys on video. But that because I think so long about what it is I'm going to do next, I seldom regret what it is that I start, and I almost always finish what I start. There may be cases where I have to step back and rework something later, but I'm never going to like totally scrap something. Maybe my neighborhood fiber company sweater is probably a notable example where years later it's like this just isn't doing it for me. So I know I'm sort of curious about would it be your guys' thoughts on the matter, like how do you feel about your whips and your whip count and what you finish, and would it be, I'd really like to hear about whatever your thoughts on that stuff. So feel free to share in the YouTube comments or the episode thread on Ravelry. It would be great to hear your thoughts. So with that, I hope you guys have a lovely week, and I look forward to talking to you guys next week. So take care, guys. Bye-bye.